guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you had an awesome weekend. Today it's Monday, but before we get into those things, I want to quickly mention that my MetaFi is thriving. I reached 100 members around a week or two ago, and I have another tournament in the pipeline. We're of course talking about the Eco Cup Legacy version 3.0, where I have invited Newton, awesome Cradle Control player, Neville Shoot, Doomsday Aficionado, and of course JPA Mr. Sneak Attack himself. And they'll be battling against 29 of my members in a double elimination bracket. They'll be playing Legacy with open deck lists. Scheduling will be very flexible, so you have around 3 or 4 days to schedule with your opponent. And when the dust settles, I have cool prizes for top 4. I will be splitting some treasure chests, 60 of those, and of course these foil signed artist proof cards that I keep digging up. Llanowar Elves and Goblin Matron, I made sure to go for some legendary cards with quite the legacy behind them, no pun intended. So if that's anything that you want to take part in, I highly suggest you join my MetaFi. With the $10 subscription, that subscription gives you access to all, guest content, all deck guides. You get to join the Discord, be part of a thriving and growing community. And of course, you get to play these Eco Cups free of charge. So what are you waiting for? Well, now let's get into things. This is Monday. That means it's Metagame Monday time. And we have 5 fresh challenges to look at from the past week. Let's quickly address the elephant in the room. What did we agree last time? We agreed we would play some Manic Graveyard Hate, and this column would be smaller than last time. I guess we kind of failed in that regard. So 5 copies of Oop Soul spells out of the 40, that is, quite a high number, and simply something we should try and address with deck building. The biggest shock here is 7 copies of Blue-Black Reanimator. I think last week somebody decided to make a mid-range build of the Reanimator deck, like Tameo Bowmaster, pushes Murktide, a single Oculus, I believe, and ended up doing well. And people like that kind of strategy where you have your consistent deck with a broken angle, kind of like Cephalid Breakfast or, Subnado mid-range. It's kind of the same strategy, right? So at this point, we simply just need to address these decks by adjusting our decks. We can't just say, oh, I have a Surgical and a Cage in my sideboard, I'll be fine. And if I'm not going to be fine, then I'm going to complain the graveyard is too broken. We need to give it a better go at addressing these decks. So that's certainly something that I will be looking at in the week to come. And I'll try and also, add in a couple of thoughts as I go through these results. But pretty cool innovation here. They basically built the deck as it looked post sideboard in earlier iterations of the deck. We import it into your Baragoyves, your Murktides, whatever the case may be. The whole point is this deck is basically a tempo deck that just swap 10 cards for 10 combo cards, and so they kind of have that angle so you keep your opponent at their toes. And at that point, when the opponent disrespects your deck, they will have to deal with Atraxa. When they over-respect your deck, you'll beat them with, the blue-black mid-range tempo angle of the deck. So that's why the deck is good. It's because whenever you get over-respected or under-respected, then you're in a great spot. Next column here is Days. So let's look at the different flavors of Days. We, of course, have the Dimir deck being the favored one. So the good things about the Dimir deck is you have consistent mana. You can play all the 4 Wastelands, and you can play sideboard Harbinger of the Seas. So that's kind of the advantages that I'm looking at when I am thinking about blue-black tempo. Actually, I think I should probably record with that deck for tomorrow's Tryhard Tuesday. I think it's about time. My favorite version at the moment is the Grixis version, which is basically trading the good mana base and the ability to play Harbinger for running better removal in Molten Collapse and having access to Pyroblast. So, those 2 decks are functionally the same, but you're kind of making a decision based on how often do you expect to get Blood Mooned, how many Sagas do you think you need to Wasteland, how many, Pyroblast do you think you can successfully fire off. So pretty interesting here. And it's actually the same with the Esper deck. The Esper deck has better removal. like plowing or prismatic ending onto another Goyf will make it disappear for good. We have other examples of big creatures that you can plow, but you wouldn't be able to push. And if you like Teferi in a, somewhat of a blue metagame, certainly a viable choice. So always love to see that deck do well. Then we have a couple of Core Steel Cutters. So these decks are something that I toyed with a few weeks back. I think let me see. Maybe I had a video anyway, and the card performed really well. Then somebody took that list and won a challenge, and then it's been like a mainstay between with Days Delver type communities ever since. So I'm pretty excited to see if this is just the new talk of the town, or it's actually going to be here, let's say a month from now. I think it has great potential as long as your cutter is surviving. I will say I want to care about the number of prismatic endings in the metagame. I want to care about Abrupt Decay and Witherbloom Command. I care about Hydroblast, right? Also Boseiju to some extent. So all of those things are something that I'm considering when I'm picking my flavor of days. Next card here is Phyrexian Dreadnought. It's a fan favorite. I know the same player made 2 debates during the week, so obviously kudos to them. I think this was a blue-white version which played the Thrall. So the Doorkeeper Thrall, when you're looking across the field, you see Atraxa, you see Spy. What else do we see? We see Oracle here out of Doomsday and Breakfast. We see Atraxa out of Sneak Attack. It's very important with these Stifle decks. I've talked to Harain about this and during our coaching sessions that some of them are also available on this channel, that in order for Dreadnought to do well, you need to have some expectation that your Dreadnought is surviving some percentage of the time, and your quote-unquote Stifle cards help against the field and not just producing a Dreadnought. So a good example of that is, Consigned to Memory was awesome when Eldrazi was legal. Doorkeeper Thrall is amazing if you're playing against all of these crucial ETBs. So pretty cool to see that deck. I've been wanting to get back to it, just haven't found the time for it, I guess. Next column here is Assorted Combo. And you could argue I should have put Breakfast with Graveyard, I should have put Breakfast with Days, but I'm actually going to put it here with Assorted Combo. Assorted Breakfast is another deck that has the concept of if you over-respect it, you can just lose to, Nadu and Sagas. If you under-respect it, you can just get turn 2 to Splinter Twin style. And that puts a lot of pressure on your opponent. This is not something you can just easily measure and see, oh yeah, this amounts to this and that many wins, but it's just something that every Legacy player will nod their head to, that they didn't know if they should develop their own game plan or hold up interaction, because you can get kind of punished either way. And that's the biggest thing this deck has going for it. And obviously one of these where good old Larson taking down a Legacy challenge with his favorite deck. If you want to read about Larson's thoughts about the deck, he provided a massive primer over on my Metafy, so don't be shy to go over there and check that out amongst all the other perks. Necrodominance, this was kind of a cool one, where there goes a lot of deck building into finding the right pitch spells and making sure you take advantage of all the instant speed at the end of the draw. This was not like your typical Belchurch style deck. This was more of a Soul Spike modern port type deck, which was fun to see. I always love to see those, like when creativity pays off. That's like, that will set an example, other people will brew, other people will do well, and then that's what keeps us from having, I don't know, Reanimator versus Tempo metagame. Single copy of Omniscience, so a bit more combo centric, way more focused on actually finding and resolving the actual card show and tell. Not a lot of redundancy, of course, a ton of cantrips and stock ups. So that's a deck that was very hyped with the release of stock up, but didn't really dominate all that much. Had a few good weeks, of course. And we have Mystic Forge, which is basically the deck from Eternal Weekend minus Vexing Baubles. You're trying to play Defense Grid, paying a bit more for that effect. So obviously not at all close to the same deck. Also, this deck thrives when it's generally the fastest in the format, which, it could be right now. I'm not sure about the speed between that and Sneak and Show. Probably slightly a bit faster. So yeah, Mystic Forge is cool for those who enjoy it, but it's a niche deck these days, unfortunately. Then we have a couple of sneak attacks. So again, if people are very focused, you know, with Ashen Riders, with Pyroblast, etc., playing Sneak and Show is just awesome, right? Because that will bypass a lot of the hate pieces. I do like that deck. I think it's awesome with the addition of Stock Up, and it continues to be, you know, relevant, at least in the metagame. It's a bit hard that both Hydroblast and Pyroblast are hitting this deck, though. That's not exactly where I want to be. And if people start playing more Needles, you know, again, stuff like Nomad, then all of a sudden Sneak Attack gets hit more, and there's some splash damage to look out for. But it is awesome that it's a combo deck that doesn't care about the graveyard. Next up is kind of the creature decks here. So we have Burrow's Energy, more or less a modern port before Amped Raptor got the axe. Can be, of course, effective. You're going to struggle against any kind of combo deck, and you're going to be hoping to play against, I don't know, this day's column every round, basically. Maybe Graveyard you can sideboard your way out of. But this column is going to be a big problem. The Bant Nadu deck is something that did well 3 or 4 weeks ago in the showcase, and people thought this guy was falling with the top 3 decks being Nadu decks, but Nadu just continues to show that it's perfectly powered for Legacy. It offers some cool options, especially Scythe Cat Cup, which is now making an appearance as a 4 of in both of these 2 decks, between Bant Nadu and the Cradle Control deck. The Cradle Control deck doesn't even run Nadu, right? So that says something that a competitive green deck doesn't even run the card. So Nadu perfectly fine continues to be, as people also get more practice with how to, you know, execute both online and in paper. The Cradle Control deck is another of these going wide. You hope to play against Daze decks every every round. You can have very good game against the graveyard as well. You do have to handle like the turn 1 pressure from Oops, but you do have some stuff like Endurance, Thoughtseize on the play, etc. to help with that. Next pile is going to be Assorted Control. We have a cool Esper staff deck here with Bowmasters in it. Just, you know, Marcus Ewald, I would like to respond, living his best life, doing well in a challenge. Sunday challenge with a seemingly unplayable control deck, but he always makes the most of it and is having the time of his life. So I don't doubt that in his hands, that is a tier 1 deck. Up the Beanstalk, I think this was a 5-color version. People really like to play with the new Rakshas's Bargain, but it just turned out to be not exactly what you want to do, right? You pay 3 mana to not impact the board, and that's just not crazy good. Sometimes you have that breathing room and it's awesome. Sometimes you don't. So that's why you see this deck will show up every now and then, because it is a fan favorite after all. But speaking about 3 mana not impacting the board, this is the exact opposite. This is 3 mana with the ability to interact with the board, but also the ability to draw the cards. So this is where I would be looking if I like to resolve 3 mana stuff on my opponent's end step, especially when we have good wizards now. Like, I mean, obviously Tamiyo, the trainer is serviceable, and then you can throw like a Snapcaster in the mix and you're fine. Something that I noticed when I played against the deck was that Magus of the Moon is also a wizard, and that is actually a card that can win Magic games. So I actually think this wizard's deck looks pretty good. Great mana base, great flexibility within the removal spells between Plow and Flame of Anor. And you're not playing that many bad cards in order to facilitate this card. So that's always the key for me. If I have to run too many bad cards to enable a good card, it's just not worth it, right? Or at least I have to think about that back and forth. Last column here is going to be the anti-non-basic pile that I invented last Monday. I don't know if it makes sense. Blood Moon and Recursive Wasteland is kind of what tie these decks together. And yeah, Mono Red Prison is struggling here. So why is it struggling? I think it's struggling because a lot of these decks will either have a good mana base or do something before this deck kind of gets going. It has a tough show and tell matchup, and playing against, you know, Daze low to the ground. Even when people start playing red variants, then, you know, just a basic island in play lets the Delver or the Tempo player play every card in their deck, right? So maybe this deck needs more, you know, 4-color decks, Ursa Sagas to be great. Lands keeps doing well at a niche level in the hands of experts. It's not like a metagame deck or anything, but it's certainly a deck you can tweak in order to accommodate for the graveyard being so centric. And then you can kind of prey on this column of the days decks, and then you're hoping to get a bit lucky against this column, which is kind of what we're seeing between more or less any of the niche categories of decks, that you can somewhat reliably have a solid days and graveyard matchup. But then when it comes to the assorted stuff and the creature stuff, I guess these even in between each other, between the creatures, the control decks, and the anti-basic land category, then it can kind of get muddy because those decks don't appear in big numbers. So accounting for them is questionable. Let's say, oh, I'm bad against creatures. Sure, you can run sweepers, but you're going to play against a creature deck, I don't know, a single one every other tournament or something. That's kind of the trick. Finding something that in its core does well against a variety of decks. And this is why the tempo decks are so popular, because we talked about this before, the generic disruption, days, force, wasteland, thoughtseize. That will be good against, you know, whether your opponent casts a show and tell or a flame of an ore with 3 mana, right? So what's the conclusion here? The conclusion is that people keep sleeping on graveyard and people keep losing to graveyard, which is not good. This is where we have to adapt. So how can we realistically adapt? I'm looking at spell bombs in these days decks, at least the black ones. I'm looking at whenever you have Urza's Saga in your deck, you need to play like Soul Guide Lantern, stuff like that. When, let's see, there's some decks that can race it. And what about Nadu? The thing is, Nadu doesn't really have any good, aside from Endurance, I guess, that you can main deck. This deck will have 4 Endurances, which is awesome. And then we get into a bit muddy waters here with these control decks that realistically probably just can't roll up and run anything but Endurances in the case of green. So can lands, which is good. They also have, you know, access to crop rotation, etc. So that's not going to be the biggest problem. And then maybe the flex slots of Mono Red Prison has to be something like Unlicensed Hearse or Ghost Vacuum, like back in the day. But I think until we tried that, there's not much complaint equity here to be gained. Sometimes when I scroll social media, I can get the impression that people would rather, you know, not play enough hate and lose to a deck to keep some narrative alive that the deck is broken, rather than actually give it a go and adjust. I think last week, Ozymandias played 4 ley lines in his Demir tempo sideboard, won the challenge. That doesn't, you know, necessarily prove anything, but it's mainly just he was willing to go the extra mile in order to combat metagame trends. And I think that's that's certainly something we can learn from and try and do a little bit better in the week to come. So that's going to be my message for today. Adjust for the metagame shifts. And if that doesn't work, then try it a little harder. And if that doesn't work, then we can talk about balance in the format. So until next time, have fun playing Legacy. I know I will. And I'll see you back soon for more sweet Eternal action.